Hal, we have to welcome a very special guest on the Skype machine all the way from Los Angeles, California, from LA Guns, from Faster Pussycat. It is Ace Von Johnson. Ace, good to talk to you, man. How are you?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm great, guys. How's it going today?
Hey, and don't forget also from PBR. That was Ace's first punk band.
Oh,
wow.
All right.
Al Sparks calling me out on my first band.
That's right. Yeah. Named after the beer, I'm assuming.
It's a long story. It was named after the PBR street gang, the Patrol Boat Recon in Apocalypse Now.
Oh, yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was explained in the cease and desist letter to Pabst Blue Ribbon.
That's right.
No. Did you see Apocalypse Now?
Right.
We
predate you by, right? Yeah. I thought it was like PRB called PBR, like a punk rock band called PBR.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
We made up a bunch of stuff.
Also, before we go any further, you have to introduce us to your faithful sidekick there.
Yeah,
looking very
for those
cute
that will
on
be
the
watching
screen.
the video of this, we have a fourth member of the podcast that's happening right now.
Yeah.
Who's
joining me here is my four-legged partner in crime. This is Maila, the rescue pup, who's no longer a pup.
She's a rescue pit. Yeah,
she's a rescue pit. Yeah, she came from a shelter here in the LA area.
That's great. She's like one of the most calm, sweet dogs. She has kind of a bit of a like. I'm talking about you. Yeah. She just looked at. She's got real she's got no visible eyebrows in terms of her coloring, but very animated forehead, very animated. Like, what's going on? I think are they talking about me? I love you.
She's she's kind of like a blue pit, but she has a lot of white face. It almost looks like she's wearing a cowl.
That's right. Like a
blue
superhero.
Cowl. Yeah.
Or some sort of character on Game of Thrones.
Yes.
So let's jump right in on this because there is a genre of rock, the Double Neck Download, we've been focusing on kind of our love for hard rock / hair metal and kind of everything in between, that kind of like that entire floating genre of stuff. And I think what sets it apart from other forms of rock a lot of times is a certain level of virtuosity, an expected level of guitar playing capability that's higher than just, say, what you would expect from a country player, what you would expect from a punk player or a pop player, maybe... unless they're, I guess the bands that surround some bigger artists or that follow them around have these amazing session people in them. But there's an element of just like being able to play your instrument. You know what I mean? And you started with punk and kind of grew into rock in that regard. Was that a factor of playing your instrument better, getting more into the instrument? Was it being fascinated by the genres and the styles and the ability?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's kind of how, as I got into my 20s, I just, it wasn't that I didn't want to listen to punk rock anymore. It was that I got kind of, I mean, you can only learn so many Ramones and Stiff Little Fingers and, UK sub songs.
Right.
And as a guitar player, I just was looking for more, I started listening to, more Thin Lizzy and Motorhead and Alice Cooper and sort of classic rock. And then that sort of segued into, I don't even know, just more guitar related music.
Yeah.
And I was trying to sort of better myself on my instrument, which I've still yet to do, but that's neither here nor there. But I was trying to branch out, and as far as like career stuff, I also felt like I was living with some people that were in bands that when I was younger, and again, this is in my 20s, early 20s, I was living with some guys that I thought, when I was a teenager, I was like, oh, these guys are rich and famous. And then when I saw that they're living in a 2-bedroom apartment kind of, or even sharing a small house in the valley with, 4 people, I was like, okay, maybe there is no Maserati in these guys' driveway.
Future.
And
right.
I just was looking to, do more. And so that kind of was what got me out of trying to join more punk bands. And then just, given opportunities, I was pretty, I think I'm a little bit of a, I don't want to go so far as to be like, oh, well, The Secret says this, but I really was adamant about trying to get into I wanted to be in a rock band, and I wanted to be in a known, established rock band, and and over the course of maybe 18 months, I sort of made that happen.
Yeah.
And so,
and it worked twice. And that's an interesting scenario we were talking about when we knew we were going to have you on, Ace, is that, when I look at the pragmatic working blueprint for a band in this space in 2019 with a recognizable name, like Guns, like Faster Pussycat, you're looking at a situation where you're like, all right, this band can work as much as it wants. It can work steadily. It can do the cruises. It can do, the theaters. It could do big package shows, whatever. But the idea that you came up with a way to do it in two bands is it's borderline responsible is what it is. It's like you got two. You must have made your mother proud, because it's like you got two steady
You set
jobs.
a goal for one of them and you got two, and that's kind of amazing. Plus, you're suspiciously articulate as a human being for somebody who's effectively, 1 foot in each canoe of effectively sleaze rock bands, like cock rock bands, which are, this subgenre of, more the underground of what, while hair metal was kind of ruling, there was this kind of sort of more legit, it would seem, of the LA scene.
Yeah.
LA Guns and Faster Pussycat, kind of, while they benefited from the float that happened from the other bands, there was definitely but this is the real deal for a lot of people, especially when I was in high school.
Did you mean to pick up two, or did it just kind of organically happen that way?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the Guns thing is so new that it just sort of, it was a natural progression, I suppose.
Right.
And that opportunity had come up a couple times with them previously over the course of, I don't know, maybe the 9 months before I actually came in. But the Pussycat thing was kind of a natural progression too. I was playing with some guys in LA. I ironically just saw about half of them yesterday at the Ride for Ronnie event, the Cancer Fund thing that Wendy Dio started. And we were kind of reminiscing about that. A buddy of mine named Jerry Montano, who used to be with Danzig and Hell Yeah and a couple other bands, and some other people. And I was in a punk band in LA called the US Bombs that were popular in the 90s. And our agent saw me, and he had a band himself, and he was a guy named Charlie Overby, who had a band called the Big Bang Babies in the late 80s, which kind of their only namesake or known factors that it's where Kerry Kelly started, who was in Slash the Snake Pit and Rat and LA Guns at one point, and then Night Ranger and a bunch of bands.
Right.
And so so he saw me and he was like, "What are you doing in this, dirty punk rock band? You look like you should be in a rock band." And I think I was 23 or maybe 24, and he had a project that I ended up doing called Charlie and the Valentine Killers, and had Brian from Kix in the band, and Chad Stewart, the drummer of Faster Pussycat, who at the time was also in LA Guns, and a couple other people like that, Jerry Montano and some other people. So that opportunity sort of helped me network into what eventually got me in Pussycat. So, in the arc of everything, it just was sort of a natural thing. It wasn't like, I walked into a audition, or I, showed up at the singer's house and banged on his door and was like, "I'm going to be in your band, man." It just was one of those things where,
one thing led to another.
A good analogy for you, Hal, would be like if you went and did an episode of a show, and there was an actor or somebody like that you respected or you admired their work, and you wanted to work with them. You know how it is. Maybe he'd be like, "Oh, I had a really great chemistry with you. Next year, I've got this thing going on." He may call you in for a gig or something like that. It was that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I haven't heard a story about somebody else playing in bands like that or ending up in bands like that since the people talking about the 80s, since the scene in the 80s where a lot of bands kind of overlapped with each other, and members of Quiet Riot ending up in in different bands, and ultimately LA Guns and Guns N' Roses, and that split and that kind of bifurcation that happened. Most of the time the hired gun positions and the like that happen now are much more sort of corporate in how they happen, a lot less organic, So, I mean, there's even that documentary that's out right now that basically spells out how
Hard
these guys,
Gun.
Yeah.
Really good stuff. Well, you also, it should be noted, I think, got into both these bands at the right time as well, because you're in a united LA Guns. You're in an LA Guns where Phil Lewis and Tracy Guns are back together and making music and on top of their game. You're in a Faster Pussycat where Tammy is, I know he had his health concerns a couple of years ago and everything, so he's been able to straighten a lot of that out and be on top of his game, which has to be nice. And I also think probably from their perspective, this period, the 2019 versions of themselves, they're probably looking for a pretty reliable dude to be in the band, and that's probably a good fit for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think of myself as kind of being that guy, and when I joined Faster Pussycat, I was 26, and the sort of vibe in the band was sort of coming out of the early aughts, and I think Tammy still wasn't sure what he was doing. That we were still doing some of his industrial project that he had in the 90s called the Newly Deads, and it was just sort of all over the place. Even some like alternate versions of songs like Bathroom Wall Remix and stuff.
Right.
And I'm not going to take any credit for sort of steering the band
ship
back to being a rock band, but
right.
It should be noted that I definitely had a bit of an influence. You learn to work with, how to communicate with people when you're working with them. And I just, over the first 2 or 3 years I was in the band,
awesome.
I think it took me a minute to kind of get my footing as the dog is rotating in front of me
just
here.
mooning us.
Yeah, I did. For anybody that's watching on our Double Neck Download YouTube channel, Maila just turned around and pressed her pit bull ass up against
she did press
screen.
ham
That's
on
nice.
us. That was great.
She's trying to figure out how to make
lay
this
down
pillow.
with
There's a pillow here. She's trying to make it work in her favor, which is her MO, is to just steal all the pillows.
Right.
You were saying,
coming in and then just trying to kind of get him back to doing. There was a lot of the stuff that wasn't in the set that's in the set now. I guess would be the kind of easiest way to explain it.
Is it about in that situation? Is it about because you have kind of a fresh take on it, and you're not kind of, because people get burned down by their own stuff over time. They kind of take it for granted. They don't see it from the audience's standpoint anymore because they've been doing it so long, and it seems to be the audience has become a conveyor belt once you've been on the road for a long time. If you're not careful, that is it the fact that you help them fall in love with it again because you have a renewed respect for it essentially and gives them that perspective they may not have had in a while?
I mean, I wouldn't be so bold to go that far, but I mean,
we froze up. Hold on.
In other instances, definitely bring an outside opinion. I mean, I kind of went to him and I said, I'm out there at the merch table every day and I'm on your social media that you're maybe not privy to or paying or whatever. And, your fan base, the people sort of putting food on your plate are wanting X and Y and Z.
Yeah.
And, maybe you should consider taking those opinions and doing something with them. And at the end of the day, it's Tammy's band, and he's the boss, and I work for him, and I play in his band. And so, I was going to say a minute ago, it took me some time to kind of get my foot in the door, I guess, to where when you're working with someone, you sort of learn how you can and cannot speak to them.
Sure.
And, I'm assuming I can swear on this.
Of course.
Say whatever you want.
Yeah.
Well, shit. Okay, so, there's some people you work with where you may have to go, hey, Richard, I was wondering if maybe tomorrow you could wear maybe a dressier shirt. And then there's some people you could go, hey, fuckface, put on a cooler shirt.
Yeah.
Right. So as I learned, how to communicate with everyone in that camp, just like you do in any,
absolutely,
whatever you're doing job-wise, I kind of addressed to him, I was like, hey, there's some songs in your repertoire we're not playing that I think people may want to hear, and that would be cool to play. And, and he was like, oh, fuck, Bubba, you want to fucking do, I can't even think of an example. We weren't playing a lot of the singles. We weren't playing Don't Change That Song. We weren't playing You're So Vain. We weren't playing Poison Ivy. He's like, oh, fuck, Bubba, if you want to fucking do it, have the guys fucking learn it. And I'd be like, okay. And I'd go to the other three guys and go, hey, Tammy wants to do these songs, and off we went, and we jam them at sound check, and next thing you know, they're in the set. So I think that was good for everybody, from a business standpoint, and for the fans, and for the brand, and it's definitely put me in sort of a I feel like I'm riding shotgun in the band a lot. Sometimes I'm driving, sometimes I'm not, but definitely after 9.5 years now, which is a fucking lifetime.
Yeah.
Or in some places, a prison sentence.
Right. Can you get paroled out of some of these bands?
A bit of some influence. So it's cool. It's a cool spot to be in with that band. And then, with LA Guns, I've only been in for a minute. I've been in for 9 months. They talked about bringing me in a couple times over the year preceding me joining, actually, or coming in, I should say. So it was mostly just timing and scheduling, and
availability.
There was some sort of behind the scenes politics I was trying to avoid. But I'm glad to be in now, where everything's sort of gelled, and we're promoting the second sort of quote unquote reunion record, which is doing really, really well. And cool. Yeah.
Now, how does the scheduling work? I mean, let's say that is it first come first serve? I mean, if I'm Tammy or I'm Tracy, and we get a good offer for August 13th, and you're not already, is it just I call you up, go, hey, we got a gig, and then you're down, or do you have to do a little check-in with both camps? How do you work all that?
So far I haven't encountered too much of that. I'm actually subbing out for Faster Pussycat later this month. Not because I have a conflict with Guns, but just I'm out of town on some personal.
Oh, okay.
So, basically when I joined Guns, I came with a couple caveats, I suppose you would say, and one of them was, it might behoove everybody to just know that in case there is an incident. A scheduling conflict, right. I should say, that, maybe someone could cover me. Whereas Adam Hamilton, the guy who was playing guitar before me, who was their bass player for a while in the early 2000s, he's agreed to cover anything I can't do. And then same thing with Pussycat. I just told Tammy recently, I said, it might be in everyone's best interest to just have someone to cover me in case there's stuff that conflicts or I can't do, or there's some stuff I'm working on outside of music right now, television related, that may take me out of the loop for everybody momentarily, depending. I don't know yet, schedule wise. But, when you're doing stuff like this, it's not unheard of to have guys sort of standing by to either fill in or, hopefully not take your gig permanently, but, right. cover your bases, and I think a lot of people do that. I think it's more common with, drummers, but you see with
my drummer in my band has his own side band, and they've opened for us. So his band's open for my band.
That's one way to take care of it.
Yeah, he just plays the set ahead of time and just stays on stage. He's the one guy who doesn't have to rotate anything.
I'm not mad at that. We were talking about doing shows with Pussycat and LA Guns together, and there was some sort of
makes 100% sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. It does to me, but I think there was also some. I'm going to choose my wording wisely here. There was some opinions on who would get me, and if both camps would allow me to do the other camp.
Sure.
And so I think I got a blessing to do that, and I was like, I don't see what the problem is. It's no surprise to 75% of the audience that I'm doing both.
Right.
Okay. So if I get paid twice, that's even better.
Yeah, all right, I got that inspired a perfect hypothetical just now in my mind. Okay, because when Hal and I are not podcasting, I podcast with Frank Mir, the UFC fighter, and we do an MMA podcast. Which he's the Tammy down to Hal's Tracy Guns,
right.
if you will, in my life.
Yeah,
that's the line I have to walk,
That's right?
Okay, so how about this? Let me put on my cage fighting hat for a second. Let's say, Ace, that it was decided that you must go with one band over the other. If you had to handicap, if the four other members of LA Guns fought to the death against the four other members of Faster Pussycat, who do you believe ultimately comes out in victorious in that battle? Who do you believe wins your hand? 4 on 4.
And I'm deciding?
Well, no, they're going to fight to the death. You're handicapping a fight. These
how would it shake down between these two?
It's 4 on 4 in the alley behind the whiskey. and you're just waiting to
probably really only talking about the other members of the band, because between Tracy and Timey, they both have such kind of physical resilience after the hard life that they've both lived, that they may, like cockroaches, survive a nuclear blast. Like they just may fight to a draw.
All right, four on four. Who do you think takes it?
There's some truth there. I'm going to let the audience decide that one. I have my opinion, but I'm going to keep
That's
that.
a tough one. Yeah, that's politically that can be very difficult.
Yeah.
So
this is how I get fired from both bands.
That's right. Yeah. What do you mean we'd win? I would totally. One band's actually mad that they were given the odds. Now everybody wants to pick a fight with me. Thanks a lot, Ace. So here, this. And this, for me, this actually is a good bridge off into your own musical style, your own writing, your own arranging, how you found yourself in the middle. So you're playing in these two bands, you're doing these classic songs, you're definitely living and breathing, to some degree, radio hits, fan hits, everything in between. You're obviously, the occasional cover, the occasional co-write on a new track every so often, I suppose. Where's your music, and where do you find it for yourself as a player, as a writer, as an arranger?
It's funny. I was up till about 5 this morning working on some stuff that's yet to find a home.
Right.
It's funny because before I joined Faster Pussycat in 2000, I came in 2009. I became a member in 10. Mm-hmm. But before that happened, I was in so many bands at so many different times that it was pretty normal for me to put out 2, 3, 4 albums a year.
Yeah. Wow.
Excuse me. I think I was doing, at one point, I was in like a dozen bands that were all sort of in various stages of functionality.
Right.
And Pussycat, for a really long time, pretty much took up all of my free time and sort of musical energy, if you will. And there's been some recorded output that's yet to see the light of day there, but which we're still sort of going back and forth on. But I have found the time to do other things. I think the most sort of, thing I've done, my own thing I've done is I have this sort of studio project called Neon Coven. That's basically sounds like an updated version of Depeche Mode. It's not Sunset Strip. It's not 80s. Oh, it is 80s sounding, but it's electronic rock. So we put out an EP about 1.5 years ago called Risen, and that managed to chart and got a little bit of radio notoriety. And then we put out another EP about 2 months ago called The Haunting that's still sort of circulating as well. So a little bit of input from me there. I don't know. I guess I just kind of write for myself, and eventually I may do something with it, for my own sake. I think I'm usually just trying to sort of, place stuff. Like I actually have a girlfriend coming over later who's got sort of this development deal and is looking for some rock songs. So she's going to come over here at 4, and I'm going to play her a couple riffs and see if she likes any of them, and she'll take them home, and maybe I'll get a writing credit or something. I don't know. Sure. But I feel like the last 10 years of my life has been so devoted. And also I was playing for about maybe 9 months or so. I was in a band called Unwritten Law about 5 years ago. That was pretty big. I think they might have been platinum at one point. I'm not sure. It doesn't matter. But I feel like the last 10 years of my life/career, whatever you want to call it, has just been devoted to me playing other people's music. So I'm mostly kind of in this mindset of just I service those songs and I play those songs and I do what I do. And I may, in Pussycat, where I'm the lead guitar player, maybe 60% of the solos are from the origin.
The studio version. Yeah.
And then I kind of do my own thing with it, or some, if they're like a deep cut or a newer track or something where people maybe it's not so relevant that I play note for note, I may do my own thing and I have fun with that. But I definitely, I feel like I'm not as inclined to write, or I don't have the, sort of output that I used to.
Right.
Which is a little, I guess disappointing in a sense, but I at this point now I've become this sort of guy where people will be like, hey, so such and such band needs a guitar player, which would just mean that I would be again going to that band and replicating the recorded material.
The curse of reliability.
I think a lot of it comes from, without getting on my soapbox here, it comes from, I'm definitely not the greatest guitar player, but I think it's sort of like a baseball card stats where it's like, okay, well, I'm covered in tattoos and I'm easy to work with, and so that's
you hit for average.
That's right.
You hit for average.
That's right.
Yeah.
That outweighs whether I can play some Vito Brava solo or something like that.
You're the Tony Gwynn of hard rock.
That's right. And dropping a Vito Brava in the middle of White Lion for the Who's at home. Many people who listen will know that. And one of my favorite bands when I was in high school, actually.
Yeah, great band. Mike Tramp's still out there. Solo act, killing. I saw him. We did the cruise together a couple months ago. I've never seen him perform, and admittedly, I'm not really a White Lion fan. I just know the hits or whatever. But his voice was stellar. It was amazing.
Great.
So
I know he had a rough patch for a while, and largely I think it's because of the dry nature of his vocals. The way he sings
I could see that.
is rough to tour on. That rise again, little fighter. That whole it's like belt sanding your vocal cords every night. So there was a patch, and I'm glad that he's found his way back to that, because literally, there are soundtracks, and this is a good segue too, is like that White Lion Pride is the soundtrack to me driving back and forth to my girlfriend's college in the late 80s, early 90s. I was dating a girl who went to Scripps College in Claremont, and it was a hike from LA driving, and so
is that in San Diego?
No, it's east of the city. It's out, if you're going towards Upland and that kind of stuff. It's due east.
I'm just surprised you were dating a girl in college. I always dated the ones in the cosmetology program.
Right. Right. Yeah. Beauty school dropout. Right. Yeah. No, she was like, I got wrangled hard. I had a friend, no friends in LA, moved out there. Side story, but a girl who went to my high school, had no friends in LA, is going to Scripps, and she's like, "I'm going to Scripps. You should, pre-Facebook any of that stuff." There's no and so I went out, and it was an all-girls school. So needless to say, I started hanging out there every weekend, and I started.
Did you mean to put that Brittany Fox in my head just now?
Yes, I did.
All right.
So just laid it like an egg, and so I just started going out there, and I started dating this girl, Suzanne. And we dated for, ages. But driving back and forth that hike, that album it got stuck in my tape player at one point. It literally was stuck. So and the radio didn't work. So basically, if I want music in the car, that was it, right? Is there a soundtrack to a period of your life where there's, like that song defines, this relationship this year in high school, these years after school, 90, after the 2 years after high school for me were Operation Mindcrime. For junior year was Wanted Man by Rat was my theme song walking in the school doors. There's an element. Are there albums that are that way for you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I without going too far down a rabbit hole.
Please do. This is the kind of stuff we like.
I've been on a massive. I collect two things at this stage of my life, and one is you can probably see behind me, but I collect vintage horror movie trifolds and posters and one sheets and
sure.
And then I collect vinyl, and I've kind of gone in and out of the whole record collecting thing since I was a kid. Since I was in maybe like 8th or 9th grade, and before it was in vogue or whatever it is now.
Yeah.
And I recently...
And for the record, after it was necessary.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We grew up when it was necessary. People think what we had to actually use is cute now. But...
Yeah, sadly. I mean, well, and when I was a kid, I only liked analog music. I refused to... I'm trying to think what the era was.
Right?
Like let's just say circa '95 when CDs were at their height. I didn't like CDs. I liked tapes and records.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I have a much older half sister. I don't know if that was her influence or what. But so I've been kind of recollecting records again over the last maybe couple years, and in the last 2 to 6 months, I've acquired all of the, let's say, the first dozen albums I ever bought with my own money.
Right.
And they're super indicative of what year it was.
Yeah.
And it's like Stone Temple Pilots Purple. It's the first Weezer album. It's the Green Day's Dookie. It's like all that Bush's 16 Stone. It's like everything that came out in 1994. You know, and so I've been kind of going back down that path musically, and you know, it's that thing. It takes you back to that memory or that place or that time in your life, and I kind of am enjoying this like little mental renaissance I'm having where I going back to being a teenager, and then along with it comes all the punk rock. Like I've been going back and reacquiring records that I never thought I would listen to again.
Right.
And you know, whether it's Rancid or I can't even think. There's so many freaking bands that I've been kind of going back through. I'm trying to like see my record collection from here, but I can't.
You can't really read the binding on a record that easily.
Are too tiny.
Yeah, right.
But if I was going to go into specifics, like who was the band or anything like that, I would just say it was like Glenn Danzig, because I was obsessed with the Misfits and Danzig and Sam Hain as well, and it was a weird thing because
but mainly Danzig, right? That's the argument. The Misfits are actually two bands.
Yeah,
you know that they're because of the distinction between, you know, and it's funny because a lot of bands do that. And we've talked about that, like the voice you associate with a band shifts to another one, and you're like, it's really another band, but the brand is so strong, we just don't want to drop it. And,
more or less.
Yeah.
I mean, Henry Rollins had that coming from Black Flag.
Yep.
I'm sure there's a bunch of other artists like that. You know, I mean, you could say Dio and stuff like that going into the hard rock genre.
Yeah, and Black Sabbath, and that switch over, right.
Quick side note, I went to the Misfits New Year's Eve shows here in Vegas this past year, and you know, they are one of these bands that are the first to lock up everyone's cell phones in these little pouches. Yeah. And it was sold to me as this idea of I would not be distracted with everyone holding up screens, right? So as soon as the show starts, this woman, I'm like in the first, you know, mezzanine level. This woman in front of me stands up and starts yelling down to someone on the floor, Vanessa! It's Tina! Vanessa! Look up here! Count 10 rows! I'm waving! Vanessa! And I thought to myself, boy, if she only had some small electronic device that she could use to silently communicate, I would be enjoying the show more.
That's right, but also you in that moment you died and went to the 70s. It's kind of a nice thing. There, you know, Orny Adams did that this weekend. I just did stand up live in Phoenix, and I did only the late shows because that's the kind of material I do. And he was doing the early show, and they were locking up everybody. Everybody's putting their shit in pouches and stuff. And I will say, there is something to, like, nobody's got a phone out. Nobody's constantly taping it. You know, there's not, like, you're not watching the show through a sea of small screen versions of it in front of you. There is something that I appreciate in that. And it certainly gives bands more room to fuck up on stage, which I think... there's a weird pressure because we used to fear Big Brother, and now it's Little Brother that's following us around. Like, Little Brother has his phone out at all time going, I'm going to tell Mom, which is effectively what it's become, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So one of the, for me, there are certain songs that, like, are definitive, that are heartbreakers, are like style makers for, you know, in the genre that I'm into or whatever. What are some of those songs for you, or you know, albums? While I'm putting you on the spot, and you have to look at your record collection that's right there.
Yeah, I was just again trying to read these spines.
You know, the funny thing about reading those, Ace just made me think of something, because I like to collect vinyl too, and for so long, you know, we complained about, but it's not, I like the physical form because I miss the old days of the liner notes, and now that I get them, I'm like, where are my reading glasses? Hold on, I gotta get something so I can read these.
You know, well, it's Ricky Rackman and I had a long conversation about this. It's the physical act. You're engaging in the music. You're taking the record out of the sleeve.
Yeah.
You're putting it on the table. You're if it's a gatefold or there's some killer liner note, not liner notes, an insert or whatever you want to call it.
The love gun, pop gun. The pictures on the back are big enough where you can kind of get absorbed in them.
Sure,
maybe
some temporary tattoos.
Yeah, that's the good stuff. The back of Kiss Alive too. We've talked about like the pictures of Gene and Paul and Ace and Peter on the back of them. Those four pictures will always forever be iconic to me as almost character-defining elements. Like, you could pretty much nail down 4 aspects of my personality as a human being that was born out of me staring at those pictures. That, Gene blood coming out of his mouth with his bottom lip folded down, and Paul kind of looking like the rose, and same as Ace too. They both had the same, like the other 3, and Peter looking like the only guy to wear makeup in Christopher Cross's band.
Are you
brothers?
Are you a Kiss guy, Ace?
I'm not really a big Kiss fan. I'm not going to lie. I somehow, I think just generationally, is that a word?
It is now.
Skipped Kiss.
Yeah.
It was never put in front of me. I knew who they were. I think I had like a Kiss Greatest Hits CD in my late teens or into my early 20s, just as sort of like an obligatory, I like rock music too kind of thing. I got into them backwards because I'm a huge Alice Cooper fan. And so I think, like, I kind of went on that whole thing earlier in my early 20s where I was like, I want to listen to more rock stuff. I think I was like, well, I love Alice Cooper and I love, the Misfits, so I guess I should like Kiss too. So I kind of went and I got Love Gun and Destroyer and I probably was doing okay until I think I got The Elder or something that sort of where I was like, maybe this isn't all for me.
Well, you got you need to get a vinyl of Hotter Than Hell.
Yes,
that was my first Kiss album, Hotter Than Hell.
And mine was the originals, the very first one, with like the Beatles-esque makeup on the front of it. I bought it at a like swap meet flea market when I was 5 years old. It cost $7. And it was I'd saved up my money because I'd seen it in the spring, and I came back in the fall to buy it. And like I was waiting to go back to Friendship, Indiana, where the swap meet was, and where and I was like, I stared at it the whole car ride home because it's 2 hours away to get.
See, that's what you miss with the download.
That's right.
Exactly.
It just doesn't exist.
Exactly what we're talking about. Well, here's to bring it back to L.A. Guns. Here's an offshoot of Kiss lore. You guys have a drummer now, Scott Coogan, and this guy, I saw him play in Ace Frehley's band and was blown away by this guy. Not only his drumming, but his singing. I mean, he was a fantastic singer. And I couldn't believe, Ace, a couple of months back.
It's like the Todd Kearns of drumming.
Oh, he's incredible. A couple of months ago, Ace Frehley decided to cut his whole band loose, and he hired Gene Simmons' solo band. There's a whole story about that. But basically, Scott was the kind of guy that when I heard about that, of all of them, I was like, man, I can't believe this guy's a free agent all of a sudden. And obviously...
he got scooped up.
Ace Frehley's loss was your gain. So, I mean, am I right on about him? He certainly seems like a talent from where I'm sitting in the audience.
Yeah, he's definitely a great drummer, hell of a singer. He's a great hang. Definitely can drink with the best of them. Coogie's great. I've known him for a long time.
Do all drummers need a nickname that is less angry and impactful than the other members of the band at all times? Everybody's got everybody's got to have that Eric Carr, Fred Corey kind of energy to them to be a drummer. It seems in the rock world, he's the fun guy.
I mean, to be fair, we do call Chad from Faster Pussycat. We do call him Skippy.
Right. So, I rest my case. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Very nice. You mentioned doing the Ride for Ronnie. Was that yesterday?
Yeah.
That was yesterday.
Right. Yeah. Huge charity event every year that Wendy Dio puts on for the Dio Cancer Fund, and unfortunately, you didn't get to go this year, but I saw a bunch of it online. I saw Dave Grohl surprised everybody and showed up and played drums. Huh?
Yeah, Grohl showed up and sat in with Ricky Warwick and those guys, and Keith Nelson from formerly of Buck Cherry, and they did some Thin Lizzy and some Motorhead, and it was fucking awesome. And then I had to get on stage right after that. So
wow,
we were my bass player Johnny from LA Guns and I, we were on KLOS last night. We were on our way there. We were joking. We were like, do we spin it as it was hard to go on after Dave Grohl, or B, that Dave Grohl opened for us?
Yeah. Always go with Dave Grohl open for us.
Yeah.
I actually went with the former and said it was difficult to go on after him.
Lesson
but whatever.
learned.
I mean, still, it was cool.
Yeah.
It was, it's for a great cause. I've sort of known Wendy socially for a few years now, and my mom had cancer, so it's definitely something that's close to my heart as far as raising awareness for anything cancer related. And it's a great event. They do it every year, and then they do the Bowling for Ronnie event as well. Anything like that, I'm always happy to. And I just did Hal and I just did the Rock Against MS.
Absolutely.
What was that, 2 months ago?
Yeah, it was like not even 6 weeks. And that's turned into something too. It's a slow grower, that particular event, but I think it's getting more recognition and a little more stability in how it's carried out and stuff too, because it seems a bit of a mad rush to get it on every year. And I think a lot of these are like that because they lose attention during that time. That's why they're necessary to draw attention in the first place.
Well,
it's great that they have these events like this. I wish there were more of them in a sense, because I think it helps raise awareness for causes that maybe people such as ourselves get behind that,
Yeah, the once a year thing is weird. I feel like it should be quarterly almost. You know what I mean? We all get together every 3 months and we do this show, and please and for next time, and we'll arrange, 3 months from now it'll be a new lineup of people doing different songs, and I agree.
And whether it's cancer or MS or an animal related event, whatever, I guess I was just going to say is I'm happy to continue to be involved and give my time and raise awareness for any of these causes, just because I think it's great to that all of us, yourself and myself and everybody participating, use our platform for stuff like that. I wish, in a sense, more people who had a platform, big platforms, would use more. And I think what do they call it? Influencers.
Yeah.
There's no reason why not to, can't all be sex, drugs, and rock and roll and whatever all the time. It's okay to kind of give back,
make it worthwhile,
or do these things. It doesn't make us any less cool or whatever. I don't know what the stigma might be for someone in my shoes. But
I've always thought, especially in the world of from either hair metal, hard rock, or cock rock, those entire genres. Unlike maybe some elements of industrial or punk to some degree, and even those I still think qualify occasionally, is that there's a life affirming aspect of it. It's a little. It gets a little angry at times, it gets a little sleazy at times, but the root of it is we're all here to be as alive as possible.
Yeah.
And it seems to make sense in the under the envelope of that charity or supporting first responders or any of that stuff makes total sense, because you got to be alive to party and enjoy your life. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Even the DARE and the Rock Against Drugs things made sense to me to some degree, even when the people were doing it because of community service. You know what I mean? It still made sense. You got to survive this shit, or you're not, or what are we all doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of charity efforts, while we have a few more minutes with Ace Von Johnson, in a second, I want to talk about Pitbull Rescue, because that's something that's very close to Ace and me and Hal as well, for various reasons. Just a couple other quick music things I wanted to ask you about first, Ace. Now, are you going to be, you mentioned subbing out for Faster Pussycat. Are you doing the June 29th show here in Vegas at Vamped with Bang Tango? Are you on that one?
Yeah, I should be there.
Okay, well then,
awesome.
we should be there too.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to see Judas Priest earlier that night, so I'll head over after Judas Priest.
There's your arc of of genre of music.
Yeah,
within the rock guitar world, that's a great arc.
Versatile.
Absolutely. And Rob Halford, speaking of versatile, is sounding fantastic.
That's right.
These days,
on top of his game. And then the other thing, too, Ace, I wanted to ask you about was, you've been kind of put in a curious spot, I think, and I guess it speaks well to you of you in terms of being in LA Guns for as long as you've been in, and the confidence that Phil and Tracy obviously have in you and everything. Because this was very well covered, but there was controversy about Steve Riley playing at M3, and you were vocal about that. A lot of people have been critical of the idea of him playing under the LA Guns name. But and you can say anything you want to about it, but what I specifically wanted to ask you about it was the thing that I noticed was that you being outspoken about it. I thought to myself, man, Phil and Tracy must have confidence in you, that they're cool with you. They know that you're going to articulate your position and, be able to be out there as basically a spokesperson in that situation for their band. And I just kind of wanted to ask your thoughts about that, because it clearly they have confidence in you to do that.
Yeah, well, I mean,
either that, or you just spout off and you talk what you talk, and you just let the chips fall where they may, which is possible as well.
Or they don't get on the internet, and this is all news to them. I don't know. I'm assuming they would have found out.
No, they are definitely on the internet.
Okay. Okay.
I'd like to think it was that they just have confidence in me. I know Tracy said something in a thread somewhere on Twitter. Who knows what the where, but it did pertain to that topic. And he said, Ace's family, and I love him, and he can say whatever he wants, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
And it does have minimal to do with me. It does affect, unfortunately, the brand and the band that I'm in. What it really boiled down to was I just got tired of repeating myself. I think Blabbermouth picked up on it, and actually Gene Aldridge of the Monsters of Rock cruise pointed out that they misquoted me. It said that it says I won't perform at the M3. It said I got tired of saying I won't perform, which sounds like, I won't, I'm too good to do this. But what I actually said is something about will not be performing, which the context is different.
Yeah, of course. It's a complete difference, because one is an active denial, and the other one is just making you aware of a fact.
Correct.
I'm trying to telling you the same detail over and over again, as opposed to I'm tired of asserting that I will not, cannot, or don't. Yeah.
And what I took from it, AC, tell me if I'm wrong, but what I took from it was just that this was a necessary point of clarification, because it's not like it's two similarly named versions, but it's so-and-so's version versus so-and-so's. It says LA Guns, and I mean that's because of the way the ownership of the name was worked out. But I mean it is not I don't think unreasonable for to assume that somebody could really misunderstand who's in this version, who's in that.
Over the course of about a month leading up to the M3 festival, which just happened this weekend, I performed at M3. I don't even know how many times, 5 times or something like that, with Pussycat, and hell, I've gotten up on stage with other people, Adler and whoever else,
right?
And over the years, and it's nothing against the festival other than their choice of advertising. The fact that until more recently, they had Tracy and Phil mentioned in the sort of description of the band as if they were performing.
Right, right.
And my only real genuine qualm publicly was, I have my opinions on Steve Riley doing his sort of version, which to my knowledge is just that one show, which is now over.
Right.
But my problem publicly was I just got tired of repeating myself, because every single day for about a month leading up to it, someone, or in some instances a few people would be like, hey, I'll see you there, and I would say, no, you won't, and they would go, what do you mean? And then I would have to repeat myself over. Well, you see, the drummer in the 90s had some paperwork, and I just got tired and Blabbermouth picked it up, and then like I said, misquoted me, and the whole thing was kind of obnoxious to kind of summarize. And, I think Steve trying to capitalize on the work that Phil and Tracy have done, not only over the last 30 years, but more in the more recent times, I think is tacky. And that was all I really kind of wanted to point out. I have no issue with Steve Riley or Kelly Nichols or any of those guys. It's not really my place to have an issue with them. That's like me, whatever piss poor analogy I could come up with here, but it's got nothing to do with me other than the fact that it does slowly sort of seep its way into the politics of my own band, and being with these guys now for 9 months or whatever. I'm a member. I'm in the band. I have an opinion. I've always been pretty vocal, I think.
And you're looking forward to the future of it too, because you're looking down the next couple of years. If you guys release new material, if you're touring based on that new material and all that kind of stuff, if somebody's watering down the brand by creating these sidecar shows, and you waste a lot of your time, and energy in the press trying just simply to explain that, oh, that show's not us, that show's somebody else. And this album is us, but that single's not us. Like, that can be aggravating, and I see where you're coming from in that regard. Yeah,
it's exactly that.
Yeah.
Even yesterday when I was at the Rye for Ronnie, the Magliaris, that the family that owns the Whiskey and the Rainbow are good friends of mine, and I was having a drink with them, and they said, people talking about the whiskey.
Yeah.
LA Guns has 2 shows there in about a month, and they said people are now calling asking which LA Guns is performing.
Right.
And it's like, unfortunately, that's not good for business.
Yeah.
And so that is why what prompted my sort of, Twitter post about...
If only another band had split off from LA Guns and come up with their own name and done well, there'd be an example of maybe...
I wonder if that's ever happened.
Yeah, I know. Perhaps. Just a thought.
Well, Maila must have known that we were going to talk Pitbull Rescue in our final few minutes here with Ace, because she has reemerged on the screen.
That's right. Rotated back around.
So this, as much as music, is how Ace first caught my attention, because... he has Maila as a Pitbull Rescue, and he's very vocal about this stuff. If you go to Ace Von Johnson on Twitter, right there pinned at the top of his Twitter feed, his personal merchandise donates a portion of those proceeds to a Pitbull Rescue. And just my quick positioning statement on this, I have 2. They've changed my life, particularly Mel, who was rescued from Michael Vick's dogfighting ring. That experience has completely changed my life. I mean, all my pets were rescues before, but having to deal with the ghost of what he still deals with, even at 13 years of age now, and I've had him. I've had him 10 years.
Yeah, because he was a bait dog.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, he was one of the youngest. He was about a year old when he was rescued, and then he was at Best Friends Animal Sanctuary for 2, and then I adopted him. And Ace and I talked online. He's seen the documentary about Mel called The Champions. If anybody has not seen that, you want to check it out. It's on Netflix. Yeah, and it's a real feel-good thing. Like, when I tell people about it, the first thing, and they're good people to say this, but the first thing they always say is, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can see a lot of sad. I don't know if I can see a lot of...
It's like the videos they show at Humane Society events. I do a lot of Humane Society events, and every time I show up, they play the videos of, in the arms of an angel. You're like, I don't need to see this. Well, I'm already on the team. And it's hard.
This documentary,
it's actually very helpful.
This documentary, though, has a minimal amount of that. Very little Michael Vick and a whole lot of loving families. Because what they did was they followed me around for a week, and then 5 other families, I think it was, that have adopted the dogs from Vick's dogfighting ring, and they show the homes they live in, and there's a lot of them live with kids, and some of them are service animals and stuff like this. So it's a real feel-good story. So there's my quick plug for the documentary, The Champions, if you want to check that out. But I want to talk to you, though, about that, Ace. Be just what your, kind of what brought you to that place.
Start.
I'm sure Maila had a lot to do with that, but just, talk to us about it.
I've always been a dog person. I had a pit bull in the past, and then I got her. She definitely was the catalyst for me to kind of go beyond just being a dog owner. I've always done any kind of. I was telling somebody the other day, I used to volunteer in a soup kitchen with my mom when I was a teenager. So I feel like I've always sort of had some sort of, I want to say agenda, but that's got like a negative connotation to it. I've just always had some sort of something I did. We were talking about the Rock Against MS and the I've Ronnie thing. And then when I got Maila, not that I wasn't already aware of the stigma that comes along with having these dogs or just the dogs in general, but I think I experienced it a lot more firsthand. Maybe it just was my sort of public affinity for my dog, or maybe it was just where I was at with my own career or whatever. Doesn't matter. But I realized that there's they're like the underdogs.
Yeah.
So I think I can kind of relate to that in my own journeys and stuff like that. But in life, and I just think it's so unfortunate because they're such wonderful dogs. It's actually, it's the people that have sort
100%.
of either
100%.
exploited their.
I say this, and you see it in the documentary because we do a reunion with all the families that adopted them, and you see the dogs. I mean, the dogs from the most notorious dog fighting ring in history are out there in a field rolling around and playing together. And what I said on that day was, I said, this seals the whole nature versus nurture argument. This is how they want to interact. What's
Correct.
different? What's the same? Same dogs, same exact dogs, different people.
Right.
And I always say it's same thing with a kid. You want to see you see a out of control kid, and the parents walk up 5 minutes later, and you're like, oh, okay, I
That's
see what
why.
happened here. Or the opposite. You know, Hal's a very involved parent, and his son is a well put together, smart little kid, and that's no coincidence.
Right.
You know what I'm
It's
saying?
not an accident.
So with that, I always say when people are talking about, of course, I always say adopt, don't shop, but past that, with the pit bulls, if you think you might be able to take one, consider it, because they are the most prevalent in the shelter. They're the hardest to adopt because of that stigma. But one thing I really learned, Ace, in adopting Mel, because one of the conditions of adopting him was that I had a trainer come and work in the home once a week for first 6 months that I had him. One of the things the trainer explained to me that I didn't know, he said the reason that these ne'er-do-wells are using pit bulls for fighting, in addition to their strength or size, he said, is their loyalty.
It's 100% true.
He said what they do is when you take your pit bull and you put them in between you and another aggressive dog, he thinks that dog is going to harm you. So that dog, he or she, is going to basically lay down his life to defend you. And I tell you what, when I told, because I work a lot in the mixed martial arts space, when I told other fighters that story who have a lot of pit bulls themselves, because again, I think they feel that stigmatized underdog thing.
Right.
When I told them that, the looks on their faces was just like, that is the height of cowardice. That is the most cowardly thing I have ever heard of in my life, that somebody would do that. And I think because of their imposing stature, that's one thing that a lot of people don't realize, Ace, is that loyalty factor.
Yeah, they are known for their loyalty, and I mean to the bitter end. It's unfortunate that is the angle that some
that's what gets
subhuman
weaponized
type
Right.
are exploiting. Is that they are loyal to a fault. I've in a sort of similar sense, I've had this conversation a few times recently where it's like that's why they're able to be fought, is because they're going to do what you.
Yeah. Whoops.
Nature versus nurture. If you have a dog and you only show it love and you socialize it and you allow it the opportunity to just be a dog, it's going to just be a dog.
Yeah.
So I mean, this one and I go out in Hollywood. I mean, I live in the center of Hollywood. I'm a block north of Capitol Records, and we walk around, and it's so funny how many people, like shop owners and security guards, are like, "Hey, Maila," and other guy, and you would never think anything of her other than she's just a sweet dog. And I think overall, I mean, that's what you're going to encounter. It's when you hear about these incidents in the negative ones, I always wonder what are the elements that the news
left out,
whatever isn't incorporating. Like what environment was that dog in, and what was it subject to? Because I don't think it's innate for them to just strike or attack or do awful things.
I always tell people, if you read just below the headline of whatever, dog attack, it's guy left his dog chained to a tree, left his toddler next to the dog because he realized he left his unregistered gun on the top of his meth lab and he had to go get it. There's a whole bunch of other stuff.
In between beating the dog and the kid and went back in his house to get a bigger stick. And
there is a lot of press subcontext that gets avoided or neglected. What I've seen a lot of too is a lot of times there's no photo. They're like, oh, this pit bull, and it's just a mutt. I think it's unfair to, and honestly, pit bull's a type. It's not even a breed.
Exactly.
I mean, unless you're talking about American Pit Bull Terrier. Mila's an American Staffordshire Terrier. So I mean, as far as the AKC is concerned, when you say pit bull, it's like saying I'm from Europe.
Yeah, right.
It's like, where?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Maila,
I think a lot of the numbers get skewed and misinformation gets spread. And unfortunately, if there's sort of like I don't know what the expression would be, but like hot topic where if you say, oh, pit bull attacks, teenage boy, it's like, well, what, first of all, what does the dog look like? Second of all, what were the underlying circumstances? Was there a meth lab involved?
Yeah,
or was the guy a drug dealer?
Yeah, how many matches had the kid used on the pit bull? As he was lighting them and putting them out on the pit bull before it decided it had had enough.
People think, and I always say this with Mel because people who have yet to meet him will say, "Oh my gosh, does he ever have like a flashback? Is it ever like like a Vietnam era flight?" I said, "No, actually, if you met all of my dogs and all of my cats and everything, he is the most docile one. You know who runs my house? An old cat. An old exactly. It's an old 20-year-old cat." Who runs everything? Right. Well, I was gonna say,
like Chud, is the matriarch of our house. I have 3 cats, 2 rescues, and a feral. And the feral I coaxed out. It took me 2 years to coax her out from under my house.
Did you say the cat's name is Chud?
Yeah, Chud, cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers, like the movie. Yeah.
Your stock just rose in my book.
Yeah. She lived under the house and basically shared the underside of the house with these possums and basically fought for food and whatever resources were there. So she was, and then I finally was able to coax her out with wet food in a can. So she became cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller. And Chud she's just this matriarch old lady cat now. But it took 2 years to get her. Yeah. I had 2 pet crows by the end of the time that I had coaxed her out because they would eat the leftover food and the cat food that she couldn't get because I didn't own a bowl yet. That was how I didn't have a cat. So I would sit it on this table and sit there watching her, and they would land next to me and eat out of the can eventually. It was the weirdest Dr. Doolittle moment of my life. But we have 2 foster kittens, that grew up into cats now. And my girlfriend now saves 25% of every litter that we say. So if there's 4 kittens, we're keeping 1. I just know it. I'm like, no. You can foster, but they all got to go. We can't just...
Isn't that how she ended up with you?
That's exactly how she ended up with me or whatever. I'm like, you'd think you'd walk away from the table with your winnings. You know what I mean? At a certain point. But yeah, so and Maila's your only animal currently?
Yeah, she's my only pet.
Yeah. She takes up a decent amount of space.
Well, I want to plug her shirt because I'm looking at Ace's merch. Again, you can go to on Twitter, Ace Von Johnson, follow Ace. But look at the pinned tweet at the top because the merch that he donates a portion of the proceeds to for Pitbull Rescue. Maila has her own shirt. And it's her face in the Motorhead logo. I know the one I'm ordering. I'm ordering this one as soon as we get done. This is fantastic. Does she know she's got to love this? She's got to love the fact she's got her own merch. Does she realize how cool that makes her?
I think she's just happy whenever someone pays her any attention, whether they're wearing her shirt or not.
Well, we should probably let you go, man. We've taken up a lot of your time.
We appreciate it. And Ace, I have to say, I don't know what point we started following each other on Twitter or whatever. It seemed to happen pretty organically over the last couple of years even. I'm not even sure when the hitch point was or whatever. But I feel like you and I have grown as these where social media has actually done its job. I feel like I felt like I've met a new friend through that process. And getting to actually do Rock Against MS and a couple of the jams with you has been an extraordinary circumstance in my life. So I appreciate you being around, and I appreciate all the other stuff, the aspects of your personality beyond your music. It's been nice to observe that and kind of sidecar with you across the internet occasionally. It's been a really cool thing, dude.
That.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. I was so excited that I'd shuffled my plans around today so I could make sure that I was here for this particular podcast for us because I missed one, but I wasn't going to miss this one because you were going to be on with us. So I greatly appreciate it, man.
Thank you, Al. Thank you, and likewise, man. It's been really cool, sort of same thing, just observing everything via social media and similar interests, with everybody. And
it's a tough one when you start touring a lot and you do shows and stuff and you basically split across the country. In the old days, like I got a lot of stand-up contemporaries that were my friends who are now headliners. I haven't seen them in 6 years because if I'm in Boston, they're not. That's how it works, And I'm sure you experience that as well. So it's kind of nice to be able to have that, exist or whatever. And it's kind of even greater when it's new friendships that kind of spawn out of that. So I look forward to more hanging in the next Rock Against MS and the next ride and the next charity event. And we'll do a Pitbull, night for the Jam or something like that would be a good idea.
That would be very cool.
That's what we need to do. Mel will come out. He loves to do personal appences. So I'll bring him out.
I would love to meet Mel.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe we'll do that in June if you're here with Faster Pussycat. So we'll all get together then. Hey, listen, man. Thanks again for the time. Really enjoyed the visit.
Absolutely.
And thanks, Maila, for doing her cameos.
For loaning us Ace during this time.
Right.
Whatever. She's like, she's been
Bye,
like,
sweetie.
Hi, Maila. How you doing? I'm not. Wait, I heard that. Maila.
Thanks for coming on with us.
Our ears went up.
Yeah, her ears are perking up.
Yeah. Hi, Maila.
Bye, Maila.
We'll see you soon.
She wants to go for a WALK.
Yes, you can tell.
Yeah, we got to spell that in our house, too. I know what you mean.
That's right. She's like, wait a minute. I know those. Like, those are 4 words I know.
All right, Ace. Hey, thanks again, man. We really enjoyed the visit, and we'll see you here next month.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, see you next time.
Take care.
Well, that was great. I've known Ace for a couple of years now just because of, meeting at, I think, the Ultimate Jam Night at the Whiskey, I think may have been the first time. It's hard to even pinpoint when the first time I met Ace was, but he was just struck me immediately as a good dude, and we've been kind of, following each other on Twitter for a couple of years now and kind of retweeting each other's stuff when he's got a gig, when I say something he agrees with or thinks is funny. There's this nice kind of parrying back and forth on that. Just a solid dude, and he's so articulate for the kind of music that he makes. I think it catches people off guard. He almost comes across as the guy who produced the record, not played on it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, the guy that gets interviewed in the VH1 documentary about the mix. But no, that's very true. And I also I was saying this to him as well, but I think it also shows you the maturity of this genre of music, because when it's on stage, it's timeless.
Yeah.
When it's on stage, you're taken right back to the mid 80s or wherever you were when you heard it for the first time. But I think for bands that are survivors, I think for bands from that era that not only are still with us, but are still performing at a high level, once they're off stage, you got guys like that,
Yes.
or that are essential to keeping it going. Who can have a business mind, who can be articulate, who can be reliable and dependable, and all the things that you do not associate.
They're Frankenstein's stitches.
Yeah.
They got without them, the whole thing kind of falls apart. And you were saying before that like, different eras of the people that they work with who started these bands like Timey and like Tracy may have reacted differently to a guy like Ace when they started versus now.
Yeah.
Because I think you were saying like Timey or Tracy in 1990 might have been like, who the hell is this guy? What a square. And then now they're like, this is the guy I need.
Yeah.
Thank God. It's like, this guy sounds like my sponsor. I love him.
Yeah.
So the that which can be very helpful in their circumstance. It's funny because I find that in the stand-up world, there's a bunch of dudes who wouldn't necessarily hang with me back in the day because I'm not a partier, I don't drink, I don't do drugs, and now they're like, oh, you're the one guy I can hang out with because if I hang out with those fucks, I'll burn it down again.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to that. So I look forward to seeing he's got a couple of gigs coming up. I'll be seeing him playing again fairly soon. And just a rock solid dude across the board.
Yep.
So, and then, of course, this is our 7th episode. We have yet to crest into double digits, but we are slowly marching towards that
way.
and getting, and it's nice to be able to have guests now, both in studio and out of, across the country. And it helps us a lot if you guys give us a review, hit those 5 stars on iTunes, let people know. Follow us, Double Neck Download on Twitter, Double Neck Down on Instagram, and the
other way around.
Oh, sorry.
Double Neck Download on Instagram, Double Neck Down on Twitter.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, yeah, because of limiting characters, I suppose.
Exactly.
Yes, and then our Double Neck Download Facebook page as well, like that as well, because eventually. We'll let you know of events where we will be doing the Double Neck Download live at places like Vamped. Hopefully, we're angling for some of these rock cruises where we'll be on there with some of your favorite artists, and we will stream those when internet allows us. In some cases, live from those things. That'll be part of the goal as well. So if you like the page there, and then of course our YouTube page, which I don't think we qualify for our own URL
Not
yet.
That's another thing we need. We need to subscribe to that thing and push us toward.
We need 1,000, I think, or something like that before we get our own URL. But that being said, I'll pop us up a redirect. We can do that too. We can probably find our way to do that fairly soon, and we'll announce that on an upcoming broadcast as well. So thank you guys for listening. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you for following us in our love for hard and heavy music, as it were. And if you guys have people you'd love us to interview, or I'm definitely going to try and scoop my buddy D. Snyder in here. We're going to definitely try and get Sebastian on the show. Some of the guys I interact with regularly, who from the Jam and that, will be working their way through here, telling us what's going on with them, and really getting to what their influences are and what on an emotional and physical level, what it's like to play the kind of music that we love, because I think that's always been my interest as a musician and as a songwriter myself. I'm always fascinated by the emotional connection that artists have to their own music and their own playing and their own style and how it comes out and stuff. So we'll get into all those topics and what their side projects are, and whether they maybe some of the dirt around the other bandmates occasionally, if they can't help but talk about it. But mainly that, both Richard and I love this style of music, and we love that you love it as well. So
that's it. We will do it all with a little help from you guys. So thanks for tuning in for this one, and we'll see you right back here next week for another episode of the Double Neck Download.